Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, October 9th through Sunday, October 15th, 2023. This week is, of course, definitely a very big week because it marks the official beginning of eclipse season. So, specifically, the new moon solar eclipse will happen on October 14th at 21 degrees Libra. So, this is the first of two eclipses that we will get for this eclipse season in the latter half of 2023. In case you're wondering, the second eclipse will be a full moon lunar eclipse at 5 degrees Taurus on October 28th. Okay. So the reason why I'm talking about eclipse season and I'm mentioning both eclipses rather than just focusing on this new moon solar eclipse is because this intensity definitely doesn't just last for a day. Okay. So October 14th, that is the peak of this intensity, or it's one of the two peaks of intensity that we will experience. But really, it's not just about the new moon solar eclipse. It's really the entire lunar cycle that gets amplified and intensified when we have eclipse season. That's why we call it eclipse season, right? Because it's sort of like a season. It lasts for about a month when we get these supercharged, new and full moons that we call eclipses, right? So yeah, definitely very exciting times. And to be honest with you, I will save most of my analysis of the actual eclipse for the day-to-day forecast. So if you want to, feel free to skip ahead. Otherwise, stay with me, and I do have a lot more interesting stuff to share as well. Okay. But yeah, new moon solar eclipse, definitely very exciting. And you may have already felt this energy building up for you, okay? Because like I said, it's not just the new moon solar eclipse, it's the entire lunar cycle that is intensified. So every sign the moon enters now, every angle aspect that the moon makes with the sun, it's intensified, it's amplified. And at this time, anything that can happen will happen. I often compare it to Wheel of Fortune energy, if you're familiar with tarot, because many things can happen that are significant and intense that will raise or lower your standing. That's how we tend to see things. We see things as good or bad. Really, it's not about that. It's about something much deeper, much more complex, okay? There may be synchronicities right now. Even as I'm saying this, whatever time you're hearing this, if it is not yet quite the new moon solar eclipse, we're already in the midst of it to a large degree, okay? So much can happen to, you may meet someone, something may happen coincidentally, things that occur like this typically seem unlikely or unusual, but during eclipse season like this, it's very common to have special events, fated karmic events. They seem important. Again, they seem synchronistic, etc. Okay, so a lot to unpack there. Very exciting times. Very, very interesting stuff there. We'll talk more about that eclipse in just a moment. Other than that, though, there are a couple more highlights for this week. So one is that Pluto is turning direct at 27 degrees Capricorn. Okay, so we're basically in this roughly 2-year phase, I guess you could call it, of Pluto. Pluto's already entered Aquarius, and then it went back into Capricorn. It was retrograde. Now it's turning direct, so that means that it's going to start moving forward very gradually, and it's on its way to entering Aquarius again. It's going to do this a couple times before it, permanently enters Aquarius for 20 years till 2044. But that is exciting that Pluto is turning direct as well. Also, when a planet turns direct, it means that its energies basically come back online, right? And for the week or more where the planet is roughly stationary, with Pluto, it's much more, since Pluto is so slow. It's basically almost always kind of stationary in a way. It moves so slowly. Around the time where planets station retrograde, or in this case, station direct, their energies do become intensified, right? And Pluto is always intense partially because it moves so slow. But during this week, it's extra intense because it's stationing direct. It's at basically a standstill, gradually starting to move forward after this week. Okay, so again, very kind of interesting stuff there as well. And then lastly, Mars will change signs this week, leaving Libra and entering Scorpio, where it's in domicile. So for the past couple months, we've had Mars in its deficit, in detriment in Libra. So that basically means that overall, collectively, the ambitious energy, the energy of the drive, of the fight, the warrior energy, it's been kind of offline. It's been kind of unusual and ambiguous with Mars in Libra, but now it's going to come forward in a much more straightforward way. This is not only the fighting energy, the motivational energy, it's also sexual energy as well, especially, Mars and Scorpio. Scorpio is the sign of sex. So Having that planet in its home sign, that can be good if you are needing collective, motivation and energy. But it can also make things a bit aggressive as well, because Mars is a malefic. It can be a bit of a troublemaker too, right? So that is a mixed bag, and we'll talk more about that as well. Okay, but with that being said, I do want to keep this brief because I do have a lot to say, and I want to get into the day-by-day forecast. Before I do so, I do want to mention the readings. I have to push those because that is what supports the channel. So if you are interested in getting a reading from me, they are a lot of fun. I have fun with them. We can get pretty in-depth with that. So if you're interested in something like that, check out my website, manic.mercurian.net. Okay, but with all that being said, let's get into the actual day-by-day forecast. So we start out Monday, October 9th, and depending on how you look at it, I see two major ways of looking at this day. One way of looking at this, like I mentioned before, is that we are so close to that new moon solar eclipse, less than a week away. And, like I said, these things aren't just about the day that the eclipse happens. It kind of spills over. It affects the surrounding weeks, right? So on the one hand, it's like we're already feeling this intensity. Sun is in Libra, moon is in Leo today. Leo is a very fiery, outgoing sign. So that also, indicates that we may be feeling a bit anxious, a bit energized. This eclipse is approaching. It's still several days away, but at this point, we can feel it. We can feel the buildup. Something's in the air. Something's not quite right. Something's maybe kind of exciting. It's not entirely good or bad. It's kind of both and everywhere in between. Okay, so there is something upon us, and we can kind of feel that already. However, on the other hand, I think many of us, especially those that aren't following astrology, are, we may be still kind of oblivious that this profound event is about to happen. Okay. This is also true because the moon is still in its, it's in the last part of its lunar cycle. So depending on how you look at it, the moon is losing light for sure. And that typically means that it's losing energy, that, things are becoming more mellow. The focus is becoming more in the ether, more in our minds. It's more subconscious, more in our imaginations or feelings. The focus is less physical, less active. Okay. So again, I know that's a bit convoluted, but depending on how you look at it, we're ramping up for eclipse season, but then at the same time, the moon is closing down its lunar cycle. Okay. So typically it would be a more, increasingly chill energy, but this is becoming, it's energizing at the same time. Specifically today for Monday, the moon does sextile the sun very early in the day, Eastern Standard Time. So if you want to get technical, moon, once it reaches 16 degrees Leo, again in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, makes that exact sextile to the sun. I always rave about these aspects because this is so harmonious. Sun in Libra, moon in Leo, even all day, even late into the day when the moon is no longer making that exact aspect, it's still, within proximity. So this is a harmonious dynamic. The energies, sorry about that vibration. It's my phone, but the energies are, Libra, sun and Leo moon, they're similar enough to blend very naturally together. So they're very harmonious. But they're different enough to bring something unique to the table. So it's almost like, it's dynamic enough to be interesting, but stable enough to be harmonious. So you get this kind of sweet spot with sextile energies, okay? So yeah, let's just put all that together. So it's a harmonious dynamic, on the one hand winding down, but on the other hand ramping up in energy. And then it's almost like we get this kind of like sweet little break right before the shitstorm. And I'm not trying to be negative or cynical, I'm just saying it is going to be a storm. It's going to be chaotic. It's going to be good. It's going to be bad. Right now, we just get this kind of little break, to just chill out today on Monday. And it really looks like a great energy for whatever you're doing. It is versatile in that regard. Moon is in Leo. That would typically be kind of a self-centered energy, which is not a bad thing. We can focus on ourselves, focus on our own self-expression. But we are in Libra season as well. Sun in Libra shows we're also focused on other people, listening, asking questions, focusing on others, being diplomatic as well. So yeah, it could be a great party energy, great for, being lively, having some kind of, social interaction, good conversations. If you want to do your own thing, it could be good for that too. If you want to get some work done, the Leo moon is kind of powering you to do that as well. So again, whatever you want to do on Monday, you can definitely do it. And again, enjoy this kind of little break before the intensity really creeps in and ramps up in a kind of exponential way. Moving to Tuesday, October 10th, moon continues through Leo, and then around just before noon, let's say Eastern Standard Time, moon does leave Leo and enter Virgo. So this marks a significant shift, of course. Like I said, everything the moon does right now is kind of amplified since we are, basically in eclipse season. Even though that new moon solar eclipse hasn't happened yet, we're basically in the midst of it. We are so close. So right now, again, the moon is closing out its lunar cycle. It's winding down. It's getting darker and darker with each passing day and night. And now that moon is in Virgo, Virgo is a very introverted type of energy, right? It's very focused on, processing, organizing, learning, etc. So this is a very kind of, it's like the moon's energy is offline. I like putting it that way. It's very focused on, what's going on inside of us. So I would say this could be a great time for, take advantage of this by processing, meditating, organizing, taking stock of what you have, both in a literal physical sense as well as emotionally, mentally, kind of just be aware of yourself and where you're at, and just take this moment to sort of relax if you can. On the other hand, moon in Virgo, this is a productive energy as well, but this is productive more in the sense of more like it's more chill things. Again, reading, writing, relaxing, taking stock, organizing, prepping, things like that, things that are strategic in nature. That's the kind of productive this is. This is definitely not the best time for like launching a huge new project, starting something entirely new. That's really not what it's about. We're kind of taking stock and preparing for what's about to happen. That's what Virgo's about, and that's also what this part of the lunar cycle is about as well. Two events we need to talk about for Tuesday. Venus opposes Saturn. So remember, Venus is very freshly in Virgo. It just entered Virgo late last week. And pretty much, as it's going through these first couple degrees Virgo, at 1 degree Virgo specifically, it already makes this connection to Saturn. And I'm just going to give it to you straight. So the way I see this is it's a hard aspect. If Venus was a person, I would be concerned for her. I would be worried because not only has she recently entered Virgo, where Venus is in fall there. This is, depending on how you look at it, this could be the most difficult sign to have Venus in. So Venus and everything that Venus represents, the love, beauty, aesthetics, desire, the pleasure, again, the abundance, a lot of it does apply financially. All of that has become more difficult to connect with. We may have to work harder to attain and appreciate these things with Venus in Virgo. We may feel a little bit more insecure, but on the other hand, we might feel more outside of the box. The pleasure that we do find may be very well deserved, or it may be unusual. Could be something that we wouldn't usually look at. Okay, so that's the silver lining with Venus in Virgo. But now specifically with this aspect, Venus is opposing Saturn. So again, we're channeling Saturn's energy into Venus, and that's very challenging as well. Because Saturn represents challenges and delays. It makes things, it kind of constricts things and puts barriers up. It puts a weight up. So applying that to Venus, which is already debilitated, that is pretty rough. And I did want to mention too that, right around noon, you can see here that moon is crossing over this exact point. So moon and Venus are conjunct at 1 degree Virgo. So both are kind of opposing Saturn at 1 degree Pisces at the same time. So this basically just takes an aspect and brings our focus there that much more. Okay, so because moon crosses over Venus right at the same time as this aspect, it means that we're really noticing this. We're all really feeling this more than we otherwise would if the moon wasn't there in that area. Okay, and remember what I always say about Virgo, pretty much any Virgo Pisces opposition, because that's what this is. How do you satisfy both sides? Virgo and Pisces, they are very different energies, but they both in very different ways have to do with integration and learning. Okay, and ways that you can satisfy both are kind of methodical and peaceful in nature. Doing activities that are, kind of introverted or spiritual, things where you can kind of relax your mind. So, and I know this sounds weird, but things that involve reading, writing, even cleaning, kind of organizing again, or some certain household chores, gardening, cooking, all of these are kind of methodical and they're sort of simple. And as you're doing these simple things like chopping or weeding or whatever it is, it may seem, it's definitely not the most exciting type of theme to explore, but this is very valuable when it comes to building your intuition and, cleansing your thoughts, allowing yourself to process and get, get caught up basically in everything that's happening around you. I think this is especially useful and valuable if you have been overwhelmed. There's so much going on. I know it may seem out of the question to do these things that are relaxing in nature, but this is absolutely what's critical for not only making the most of this aspect, but this is what builds intuition, and this is what builds your emotional well-being and stability as well. Okay, so that's really what I would recommend. Again, the main way we'd experience this is, it's difficult to connect with Venus's energy. We have to try harder. We have to work more. Just allow yourself to kind of relax and unwind if you can, in order to get caught up intuitively. This, on the one hand, yes, it's a very challenging aspect for sure. It's kind of almost painful to see Venus, a benefic, in such a hard position. But the good part, or the silver lining, is that this could present an excellent opportunity to get ready before the eclipse. Take advantage of this, unwind. Even just having, a long shower or a bath or something, taking a long walk, anything like this will, it's important. It's not just about resting. It's much deeper than that. And this will prepare you for the potential chaos that is about to come. Okay. And then lastly for Tuesday, Pluto does turn direct today as well. So like I said, Pluto is slowly entering Aquarius, going back into Capricorn. It's going to enter Aquarius again. It does this a few times before finally entering Aquarius for real, where it will stay for 20 years until 2044. Okay. So this is just one part of that. We're in the midst of that. Pluto right now is at 27 degrees Capricorn. And like I said in the intro, I do want to keep this brief since I already covered this to some extent, but this also means that Pluto's energies are coming back online. So that intensity, I always compare it to if you want to just sweep things under the rug and say, I don't want to deal with this or that. This experience was too intense. It was too emotional. I don't want to deal with my insecurities, and you want to just sweep it under the rug. Pluto's here to say, nope, you can't do that. I'm going to take everything out and shove it in your face, and you're not going to like it, but you have to deal with this stuff, and it's going to make you stronger. Okay. Pluto in ancient mythology, or Hades, was not evil. It was just, but it was definitely dark. Okay. So that is the energy of Pluto, and that's what you're going to get more of with Pluto. For one, being stationary like this, being intensified, but also, for the foreseeable future with Pluto Direct, we're going to have more of that general energy. Right now, there is no planet, specifically making a major aspect to Pluto, so it's not something that's really going to shake us up in the moment on Tuesday, but it is something that's going to change the background paradigm moving forward, on and after this day. Okay. A lot of intensity. Going forward to Wednesday, October 11th, moon now continues through Virgo. So again, this is a dark moon. Moon has little to no light. And especially also being in Virgo, this means that there's so much going on in our minds. We are processing right now. If you don't have time and you say, I don't need that. I don't want to relax and unwind. I don't want to process things. I want to just be really busy all the time and be entertained and be productive. That's what our society kind of pushes on us in, modern Western society. And there's different pros and cons of that. But if you completely neglect this more, slow type of energy, this energy that builds intuition, it will catch up to you, especially with an energy like this right now. Okay. So we have to, when it's appropriate, of course. I'm not saying to quit your job and just become a hermit. That would be a little bit extreme, but when it's appropriate, set time aside to rest. This is absolutely critical. Avoiding that will lead to mental burnout and breakdown. Okay. It will lead to, if you take it to extreme, it will lead to insanity, right? So that's the energy that's there right now. This is extra important, extra relevant. These things are always true to some extent, but with moon in this position, this is what's being highlighted today. Okay. One aspect for today, that would be Sun opposing Chiron. So Sun at early in the day, it's at 17 degrees Libra, where it will oppose Chiron at 17 degrees Aries, okay? So I always say to approach Chiron aspects kind of with a grain of salt. They are definitely important and tangible enough for me to mention in these forecasts, but I don't think they're as far reaching, affecting everyone as these other planetary aspects, okay? So it just depends on how attuned you are to these types of energies and if you have any major placements around 17 degrees of the cardinal signs. So those would be especially Libra and Aries, but also Capricorn or Cancer. If you do have placements around those points, this will affect you more personally. So basically what this energy is we're channeling Chiron's energy into the sun. They're having this dance or this conversation. An opposition can be, just like it sounds, it can be a bit, confrontational or critical, tense, etc. But at the same time, it can bring about balance when we manage these two very different energies together. So for instance, Chiron and Aries is kind of riling us up. It's amping us up, and it's pushing us to, we're demanding our truth to be heard, right? This has been the norm since 2018, let's just say. When Chiron entered Aries, this has been the prevailing culture that, it's outrage culture, it's cancel culture. And we can make fun of that to some degree, but in other areas it does serve a purpose, right? We want to be heard. We want our story to be listened to. We're demanding our rights, our truth, etc., right? So I do think that it goes too far sometimes, and it creates further damage, further misunderstanding, further trauma that we'll have to work out. But on the other hand, it can be useful in the right way, okay? So it is a very volatile energy, but ideally, with Sun in Libra making this aspect, it's channeling in some more refined energy, kind of more chill energy, let's just say. It's energy that is promoting us in being diplomatic. Let's push our truth and demand justice as we see it, but let's also hear who we're talking to as well. Let's have a two-way conversation, right? Let's keep in mind the nature, the beliefs of whoever we're talking to or working with, right? That's what Libra says. That's what Sun in Libra is contributing to this whole dynamic. So I would say on the worst end, it could be a bit tense. We may be more aware of each other's feelings, but that's not always a good thing. Could lead to some maybe explosive conversations or at the very least awkward situations where the truth comes out in maybe not the most ideal way. But on the plus side, the ideal manifestation of this, I could see some really civil, really harmonious and productive conversations had. And the nature of those conversations may be very different. It could be between two family members, two friends. It could be between the workers of a large company and the CEO, or whatever it is, the citizens of a country. This does bring about protests sometimes, but whatever that conversation is, it could bring about a very productive, harmonious conversation there. It just kind of depends on, honestly, it depends on free will. We can, with this or any aspect, it doesn't have to be any one way. We can use this different ways, okay? Thursday, October 12th, Moon does enter Libra today, so we are ramping up, the new moon solar eclipse will happen with Sun and Moon in Libra, so this means that, we're entering the arena, we're entering the time where the energies are really ramping up, okay? And to be, technical and correct, Moon actually won't enter Libra until, in the late evening, kind of night, Thursday night, Eastern Standard Time. So for much of Thursday, we still have Moon in Virgo. So remember what I said about these previous days this week, taking stock, organizing, and integrating, allow your mind to rest. All of that good stuff is relevant for most of Thursday, Eastern Standard Time, or, surrounding time zones as well. Okay, so just remember that. And, if in the evening you feel kind of an increased sense of, there's something looming on the horizon, you feel something ominous, there's something brewing, it could be Moon entering Libra. That would typically be a very relaxed, detached energy. But because it's setting up the scene for the new moon solar eclipse, it may feel a little different this time. It may feel a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, but, the energies are kind of shifting. You feel something building, feel something coming, okay? Okay, other than that for Thursday, the main event is Mars does enter Scorpio today. So again, Mars has been in Libra where it's in detriment. So that means that the ambitious energy, the sex drive, it's been kind of weird. It's been offline. It's not behaving how it normally does. It's been supporting us in being more strategic or more passive at times, right? So this completely changes with Mars entering Scorpio. Now what's favored is, hitting problems kind of head on. You can still be very strategic with scorpionic energies, Mars and Scorpio. We're still being strategic for sure. But the difference between Mars and Libra and Mars and Scorpio is that now with Mars and Scorpio, this is a very instinctual energy, very instinctive, maybe the most instinctive or instinctual. So it's kind of primal, we're more aware of our feelings. What do I really want? What do I have to have? What can I not have? It's black and white. This is a fixed energy. Scorpio is a fixed sign. So if you're used to that kind of thing, if that's how you normally are, this is going to be real easy for you and you'll be emboldened and, it's your time to shine. If this is a little bit, maybe not how you normally are, then it may be more difficult, but you can always, look to how does Scorpio act? How do Mars energies in general, what does that look like? You can behave a little bit more like that to take advantage of these types of energies. And that's what astrology is all about, right? Is, adapting to these types of things. So yeah, Mars and Scorpio, more ambitious, more driven. There's more of this warrior energy around. I would say Mars and Scorpio is more defensive though. So it's not that we're all necessarily out looking for a fight. We're fighting just for the sake of fighting. I really don't see that with Mars and Scorpio. It's more defensive. I think with Scorpio placements and transits in general, we become hyper aware, right? The intuition, the instinct becomes heightened very dramatically. But also the analytical ability as well. Scorpio, although it is very emotional, it can be very analytical as well. Really we tap into every sense that we have because we feel like we're on kind of a survival mode. We feel confronted in a profound type of way, if that makes sense. So these are the themes that will be, kind of playing out over the next couple months with Mars in Scorpio. Okay. All right, and moving forward to Friday, October 13th, Moon now continues through Libra. So again, we're very much, kind of in the midst of it, I guess you could say. We still won't have that exact new moon solar eclipse on today quite yet. Okay, so Friday, it's more, the moon is completely dark. It's so close to the sun. We're almost there. We're just not quite there yet. So again, you may feel anxious, like something's about to happen, but it's just not quite happening yet. On the other hand, this could already be a day where there are unusual things playing out. It's like we're experiencing the new moon solar eclipse, just not at quite the intensity that we will one day following on Saturday. Okay, but we're already in the midst of many of these themes of new beginnings, odd, unusual things playing out, things that are unusual. Look to whatever placements, whatever houses you have in Libra, and this is the area that's highlighted. We've got sun, moon there. Of course, the south node, that's what makes it an eclipse, is sun and moon being close to the nodes, right? So sun, moon, south node, and Mercury all in Libra. That is a stellium, depending on how you look at it. So there's a huge focus there. So I've already described this general atmosphere of huge changes and synchronicities. But what are they concerning? For one, I'd say they're kind of concerning everything. They kind of overflow into every part of life. But if there is one area that it's more focused on, it's of course represented by Libra. So the nature of our relationships, how we communicate, how we respond and react and adapt to other people. Who do we associate with? All of these types of things are definitely, the area of potential change over the next few days, but even this whole month in general. Okay, the action is in Libra, so that's the area of change. It's going to be different for everyone depending on where it falls in your chart, but as a collective, it's how it's very social, the nature of these changes, right? It's also how we handle information. Libra is intellectual. Okay, so those are the main areas of change, but it spills over into everything may be changing today. Friday, there is one aspect. So early in the day, Mars will trine Saturn. So Mars, when it If you want to get real technical, it's when Mars is at the last part of the first degree of Scorpio. Okay, that's where Mars makes this exact trine to Saturn. So Mars trining Saturn is kind of the ideal energy for strategic planning, goal setting, things of that nature. Speaking of goal setting, we're so close to the new moon solar eclipse. This is an excellent time for setting intentions, utilizing not only the new moon solar eclipse that is upon us, but also Mars trining Saturn. What are your goals? Okay. Specifically on Friday, with Mars trining Saturn in this water trine, Mars in Scorpio and Saturn in Pisces. This trine is these are conjuring up water energies, right? That's where Mars, the drive and ambition, Saturn, the long-term thinking, goal setting, etc. It's focused on the water element. So spiritually, emotionally, what are your goals? What do you want? What do you need to do? What are your responsibilities as well? This is an excellent time for thinking about these things and asserting your desires into the future. What can you do for a better tomorrow? Again, especially emotionally, spiritually, etc. Okay, let's cruise right along here. Saturday, October 14th. This is the big day. This is the special day. We get this exact new moon solar eclipse today, and it will happen at 21 degrees Libra. And you can see here, noon Eastern Standard Time is just before that new moon solar eclipse. So really it will be very potent all day if you are in Eastern Standard Time or even the surrounding time zones. It's because this eclipse technically happens right around midday, it's really going to be felt all day. It really spills over into the surrounding days as well, but especially Saturday. This is peak intensity. This is where anything that can happen will happen. Expect the unexpected. And I may hear, some of you may say, well, this is a new moon. I typically would say the new moon is the most peaceful part of the lunar cycle, right? So how does that work? It is a little bit different with an eclipse, right? Because this just means everything's supercharged, it's heightened. So how do I put this? On the one hand, crazy things will happen, synchronicities, etc., all that action. It's still going to happen today as well. The difference, though, is that this is still a new moon, so the moon is dark at this point. If you think right now is crazy, this is all setting up future events that are about to come, okay? So another way of putting that is moon right now, it's a new moon, it's a dark moon, it has no light. So yes, something is beginning. It's a new moon, it's starting a new chapter, throwing us into a new dimension, so to speak. That is starting something new, but it's relatively quiet, let's put it that way. This one is particularly noisy and action-packed, but it implies that the action will only increase over the following days and weeks. Does that make sense? I know that may be a lot to handle, but that's how this lunar cycle works, okay? So it's intense, it's action-packed, but as the moon gains light over the following days and weeks, it will become even more intense. Does that make sense? And again, pay attention to the entire lunar cycle, not just the new moon and full moon eclipses, but also the entire lunar cycle is supercharged right now. Okay, so actions, synchronicities, your life may feel kind of like a movie. This doesn't usually happen. This is so out of the blue. Not today, it's not. Anything can happen. Particularly, again, those changes to relationships. How does social cohesion work? Or how does it not work? These are the areas of potential dramatic change that will occur on and around Saturday the 14th. And again, I'll say this a million times, but look to where this falls in your chart to see how it will impact you personally. These forecasts are, of course, very general. They're applying to us as a community, as a collective. But if you want that specific information, this will affect us all each in our own way. Okay, as well as, collectively, you can look at it different ways. So where does Libra fall in your chart? For you, this may be a more personal area. It may have to do with yourself, your identity. It may have to do with your career or your home life. It just depends. But collectively, it's changing the nature of our relationships, especially those partnerships, all partnerships, romantic relationships, business partnerships. If you've got a best friend, it's the very nature of these types of relationships and one-on-one dynamics that are dramatically changing at this time. Okay, that's the potential. So that's basically what I have to say. These new moon solar eclipses in general, They are profound. They're definitely worth talking about. They impact us in very visceral ways, but they're not necessarily complex, I don't think. You can basically take, in this case, a new moon and just supercharge it, times it by itself, square it, its power becomes exponentially strengthened with, an eclipse applied to it. Does that make sense? So that's basically all it is. It's profound, but it's not complicated, I don't think. Okay. One other thing to mention for Saturday, October 14th, we do have one aspect, and that would be Mercury opposing Chiron. And it does happen close to the eclipse as well. For the record, this eclipse doesn't make any other, exact aspects necessarily. You could say it quincunxes Uranus, but that is kind of a minor aspect. So no major aspects to mention other than, of course, Sun, Moon conjunct Sun, which is what the new moon solar eclipse is. But yeah, the one aspect that is noteworthy is Mercury opposes Chiron basically at the same time as the new moon solar eclipse, and it's so close. It's only, roughly 4 degrees away from that eclipse. Mercury at 17 degrees Libra opposing Chiron at 17 degrees Aries. So remember what I mentioned a few days ago about Sun opposing Chiron, because many of those themes are playing out again. So this could be kind of a 1-2 punch. Something could be happening today that again returns our focus to those deep conversations, those hard conversations. Making our truth known, maybe certain protests in different parts of the world, but also meaningful, deep conversations, okay? And again, you have, on the one hand, potentially dangerous or explosive energies, with us being a bit too forthright, not listening. We may be so passionate about being heard and about, justice, that we may unwittingly cause further damage or misunderstanding. Okay, that's the downside potentially with this aspect to Chiron and Aries. But on the plus side, channeling, filtering in this Mercury and Libra energy, it's advocating us being civil. Let's be diplomatic. Let's hear each other. Yes, we want our voices heard. We want truth. We want justice. But in order to do that, we have to hear who we're listening to as well. We have to meet them halfway so that we can be understood properly, right? So that's what these Libra energies are suggesting. And again, this is kind of an intimate part of the new moon solar eclipse. It's technically, a separate thing, but it's occurring simultaneously and in the same neighborhood as the eclipse. So that is a fundamental part of the nature of this whole day, of this whole eclipse. Having those deep, meaningful conversations, being heard, could be a very interesting day politically, economically, in the news, things like that. And again, especially with protests, things along those lines. Okay, and then lastly for Sunday, October 15th, sorry about the lag there. Sunday, October 15th, Moon enters Scorpio. And this completely changes the dynamic. Typically, I would say that this kind of, we can breathe a sigh of relief because we're getting farther away from that new moon solar eclipse. However, like I said, the farther moon gets away from the sun at this point of the lunar cycle, the more light it will get, and therefore the more intense, the more physical and action-oriented the themes will get, in line with that part of the lunar cycle, okay? But what's particularly interesting about this, phenomenon or transit, is that for one, as soon as moon enters Scorpio, it is in fall, right? Moon in Scorpio is an inherently challenging energy. Of course, if you're born with it or something like that, this will be easier for you. But objectively, this is a difficult energy, right? So moon represents our emotions. Where are we at emotionally? With moon in Scorpio, our senses can be supercharged. We may be more intuitive or more perceptive, and that can be advantageous, can be interesting, exciting, and useful. But again, it comes at a cost. We feel we're a bit insecure, a bit restless. There's something wrong. There's a problem. We just have to find it. You know what I mean? It can be a bit unnerving, especially for those of us that aren't used to it. What's really strengthening, or, depending on how you look at it, what's kind of exacerbating this energy, let's just say, is that as soon as Mars enters Scorpio, it's within orb of a conjunction to Mars. Or excuse me, as soon as Moon enters Scorpio, it's within orb of a conjunction to Mars. And you can see specifically at around noon Eastern Standard Time, Moon does cross over Mars. So basically, not only do we have Moon in Scorpio, but also Moon is right there with Mars in Mars's home sign. So this is really channeling in a lot of Mars energy. So being ambitious, motivated. We have a lot of drive. We're very instinctual, very passionate. But on the other hand, we can also be competitive, combative, authoritarian, aggressive with each other. It could be very sexual. Again, look to where this falls in your chart for more details on how it will affect you personally. But as a collective, this is what's going on, basically. We're still in the aftermath of this new moon solar eclipse. So much is changing, so much chaos. And now we get this overdose of Mars and Scorpio energy, intense emotion, intense obsession, passion, drive, etc., etc. So you can see how it kind of just adds fuel to the fire, so to speak. It really stirs the pot, to use another analogy. It stokes us, it pushes us into action. It's lighting off a bomb, so to speak. I think that analogy went a bit far. This won't compare to the new moon solar eclipse that we had just one day prior. But again, it's like we're in the aftermath, and let's compare it to an earthquake. So it's almost like there's tremors, or what's it called? Aftershock. It's like we had the official earthquake, but then now there's this aftershock that is kind of, it's presenting its own kind of identity or own theme in itself, and kind of riling us up in a different way, in a more emotional way. Okay. So yeah, and I feel like I'm leaving you on a cliffhanger, because ultimately that's what I have for you for this week. And I know I left things pretty intense, but that's how it is. The intensity will continue into next week, and I hope you join me next week. There's going to be a lot to talk about next week as well. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with me for this 40 something minutes. I appreciate it. And yeah, I really hope all of you are well. I know it's a mixed bag when we enter times that are so intense and emotional like this. There's going to be a lot going on. It's going to be very different for all of us, but at the same time, we're all going through it in our own way. Okay, so I really hope that we can take advantage of this and maybe have some fun or learn something new in the midst of it. And otherwise, you just got to roll with the punches. We can't control these things. That's what makes life beautiful, right? So not to get too deep or sappy, but this is where the astrology gets exciting. So yeah, have fun with it. Have a great time if you can, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.